As the University of Iowa and surrounding communities recover from the flood of 2008, both the public and policymakers seek to better understand the forces behind the event. A key part of this understanding, some say, is the expectations of how often floods should occur.
It's important to remember when they talk about the 100-year flood, what that really means is that there's 1% chance in any given year that a flood of that magnitude will occur. So you could have 100-year floods 3 years in a row. The likelihood is not great, but that can happen.
Could we see another flood like this? Absolutely. Could it happen again this year? Absolutely. Small percentage chance, but that chance is there.
It's fairly obvious that the flood that affected Iowa City was not a 500-year flood. We should expect floods of this magnitude much more often, much more than 500 years.
Changes to long-term planning and strategy are examples of this heightened awareness of the river and its potential.
I think a lot of people, certainly us, are going to rethink what is the right benchmark to be designing to. Is today's 100-year flood really a 500-year flood?
We are starting to convene a group of faculty and researchers on campus to talk about research strategies for living with floods.
We're looking at these things now very critically and saying, what do we need to do for the future to make sure that we're not vulnerable? Rivers are very dynamic bodies, and if you didn't believe that before the flood, you certainly believe it now.
Despite millions of dollars in damage and countless challenges ahead, UI administrators acknowledge the success stories of this event.
We saved a lot more than what was lost in terms of impact to the university. Our losses are huge, but what we were able to save, we feel very good about.
Where sandbags were breached, a lot of people were concerned about whether or not their work was in vain, and in fact that wasn't the case. The sandbags, even if water got behind those sandbags, allowed for the buildings to endure water but not the flow of the river, and that is where it can become very damaging to the structure of a building. So our buildings were in effect in a pond, not in the river.
Frankly, without the outpouring of literally thousands of people, the sandbagging that occurred that protected much of the property along the Iowa River would not have been nearly as successful as it was.
Volunteers made all the difference in the world in terms of what we were able to save going through this disaster.
I think for me and for many of our staff, the real sort of success of this was the reinforcement of all these people showing up on how important the library was to the university.
Many of us were motivated by these folks who didn't have to show up, showing up and putting in a very long day to help the university. Very uplifting. I don't think anybody involved in this effort will soon forget that.
Many who volunteered during the flood described the experience as uplifting in spite of the dire circumstances.
I hate to say this because it was such a devastating experience for so many people who lost their homes or their property. But in many ways it was kind of a peak experience. We were all focused on achieving a common goal for a common good. It was very moving to experience that.
Just the idea that people really do care, to come together and to do all we can to help sustain our community and our way of life. And so that was encouraging to see that.
Moving forward from the flood of 2008, the university embraces the challenge to better learn from this dynamic feature of the UI campus.
We have technologies available today to do measurements that we didn't have years ago. So we were able to respond by making measurements of this event that I think will be very important for future research as well as planning for floods in the future.
We have always looked at the Iowa River as a unique part of our campus and of our community and something that sets us apart. And we still do, and it's a beautiful river to visit. It bisects the east and west sides of our campus and is something that we want to celebrate and engage.
I keep telling people that with adversity comes opportunity. And in fact, as we start to think about our issues moving forward, and particularly sustainability, which is an initiative that I've pushed hard for this year, I think water is a logical focus for us. We already have a strength there, and we have a living laboratory right out here in our backyard that only a university could see as an asset.
The preceding program was produced by the University of Iowa in association with the Big Ten Network.